All right, welcome back to part two. We just finished talking about the election of 1928. We see Herbert Hoover, Republican, is able to defeat Democrat Al Smith to become the next American president. Now, unfortunate for Hoover, the stock market is going to crash in less than a year after he takes office. Herbert Hoover is often blamed for the stock market in the Great Depression. It's not true. It's just unfortunate that he became president as we got into those underlying factors have been happening throughout the 1920s. Let's take a look at the stock market. The stock market is based off of confidence. If you are confident that tomorrow or the future is going to be better than today, you should invest in the stock market or you should invest in a company. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is used to measure the stock market to see how well it's doing. Now, what it does is it takes the prices for stock for the largest 30 companies, and if they are doing well, the economy is doing well. And that kind of gives you a measure. So in the nightly news, as you watch, scrolling across the bottom of your screen, the Dow is up 100 points. It's down 30 points, whatever it's going to be. That kind of tells you how well the economy did that day. The stock market during the 1920s, a lot of risky behavior is happening. Now, speculation, as it says, is a risky business transaction in effort to make a quick product. Now, we are going to be doing an activity in class where you are going to be speculating on the stock market, buying and selling stocks. Now, speculators don't necessarily care about how well a company is doing. They just buy a stock and hope that it will go up. And so in a month, in a year, in a couple of days or a week, they can then sell that stock to somebody else to make a profit. And then we have this idea of buying on margin. This is a difficult concept to explain just through words. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to link a video or attach a video in Schoology as well. And so you can watch a 2-minute clip where there are going to be some diagrams and pictures that will show you how this buying on margin works. But essentially, buying on margin is good if your stock goes up. Buying on margin is bad if your stock goes down. Many Americans are speculating and many Americans are buying on margin during the 1920s. And so when the stock market then starts to waver, which happens on October 24th, a panic sets in and people are really worried about what's going to happen. Now that's Thursday, October 24th, shuts down over the weekend, opens back up over the weekend, and we see eventually the stock market is going to crash. The date you're going to want to know, and typically you don't need to know exact dates in this class, but this is one you're going to want to know the exact date for. Black Tuesday, also known as the day the stock market crashed, happened on October 29th, 1929. And we can say this is the beginning of the Great Depression. Much like that assassination of the Archduke was the beginning of World War I, this will be the beginning of a decade plus time of economic strife for Americans, but also we'll see this happens to be a global depression as well. Now, there are some depictions of the stock market crash and people are throwing themselves out windows and they lost their entire fortune. That's a bit extreme. Now, that might have happened to a couple of people. Essentially, the stock market begins or signals a downturn in American economic growth. And so over the next couple of years, we will see banks will begin to close and businesses will also close or fail. And therefore, that's going to result in high unemployment numbers. If we take a look at this chart from your book, you can see over the course of the late 20s into the early 30s, bank failures are going to rise, business failures are going to rise, and of course, unemployment is going to rise again. Now, we see that 12 million people are unemployed in 1932 when FDR becomes president. At the height of the Great Depression, we'll say essentially 25% of Americans are going to be unemployed. To make matters worse, so the stock market crashes impacts America and the people in America. This turns into a global depression through the Hawley-Smoot tariff. Remember, a tariff is a tax on an imported good, which makes a foreign product more expensive than an American product. So essentially, tariffs protect American business. As America puts this tariff, the highest tariff in American history, into place, foreign countries are going to do the same thing as they will then enact their own tariffs to protect against competition from American products going into their country. And so essentially what happens throughout the 1930s is there's not global trade. Because these tariffs hinder that, or they raise the prices of foreign products, the economy becomes very stagnant, and that's not good for anybody. And wrapping this up, these are the things you want to take away from today's screencast. The crisis in the farm sectors, as farmers throughout the 1920s are going to be feeling the effects of the Great Depression long before anybody else. We have many Americans using the installment plan and this availability of credit to have these new products without actually paying for them. We'll see that Americans, 80% of them, have no savings whatsoever, partly because when they get their paycheck, they buy the things that are necessary, and then they have to pay off the things that they've already previously acquired through the installment plan. We have unequal distribution of wealth, as the rich are really rich and the poor are pretty poor. And then finally, we have that tariff, and add that on to this idea of the war debt that countries like Germany acquired at the end of World War I. It really makes foreign trade not likely to happen during the 1930s, and so it just compounds the problem and makes it much worse.